When she opened the door, I was struck. Lila Hayes was in her early 30s, composed, yet unassuming. Her chestnut hair framed a face that was both kind and determined. Her hazel eyes seemed to contain centuries of wisdom, reflecting both warmth and purpose. "You must be Adrian Whitmore," she said softly, recognition in her voice. "Yes," I replied, my voice betraying a mixture of nerves and curiosity. I wanted to understand why my grandmother chose you." She smiled faintly. "Eleanor believed inheritance is not merely about blood. It is about who can honor it with integrity." Her words were precise, deliberate, yet carried a quiet warmth. In that moment, I realized the hidden family truth wasn't just about the estate. It was about the principles Eleanor had tried to instill in us, lessons many of us had ignored. Over the next few hours, Lila invited me inside and shared glimpses of her life. Her home reflected her personality. Simple, organized, and full of small tokens of kindness. Thank you notes from families she had helped, photographs of community projects, letters of appreciation never intended for public eyes. Everything she had done was deliberate and selfless. She had built a life guided by principle, not recognition. And yet, there was a quiet strength that commanded respect, a strength that Eleanor had clearly valued above wealth, titles, or family connections. As we talked, I began to understand why my grandmother had bypassed her own family. The Whitmore family, despite wealth and lineage, had often acted out of greed, rivalry, or expectation. Lila Hayes had acted out of moral courage, empathy, and responsibility. Qualities far rarer and more enduring than money or property. I left Lila's house that evening with a profound sense of clarity. Eleanor's will was not just a legal document, it was a lesson, a moral challenge, a real-life story about responsibility, integrity, and judgment. Back in my temporary lodgings, I watched the USB again, pausing at segments that detailed Eleanor's reflections on the Whitmore family. Each observation, each subtle critique, reinforced the lesson. Inheritance was never just about entitlement. For the first time, I began to see my family differently. Clara's impatience, Derek's calculation, even Maya's naivety, all reflected patterns Eleanor had observed for decades. And yet she had chosen Lila Hayes to break the cycle, to ensure that her estate would be guided by someone who valued principle over convenience. As night fell, I stared out at Havenbrook's quiet streets. I knew the next step was inevitable. Deeper exploration of the estate, interactions with my family, and uncovering just how far Eleanor had anticipated our reactions. Lila Hayes was more than a stranger. She was the key to understanding the essence of Grandma's will, the embodiment of the moral trust Eleanor had left behind. And I, Adrian Whitmore, was caught in the middle of a storytelling video, English narrative that blended wealth, legacy, and emotional will, reading with the deepest truths about family, character, and responsibility. The morning I returned to the Whitmore estate, the air felt heavy with anticipation, the tension almost visible, like a fog clinging to the grand halls. Clara and Derek had already gathered in the library, their expressions a mix of fury, disbelief, and expectation. "You've been gone for days, Aiden," Clara snapped, her hands trembling slightly as she gripped the edge of the polished mahogany table. "And now you come back? What? Singing praises to some stranger?" Derek, seated across from her, leaned back, his dark eyes calculating. "Aiden, you've seen her, haven't you? That woman who's claimed everything. Tell us, what's she like?" I took a deep breath. "Her name is Lila Hayes," I began, keeping my tone calm. "And she's, not what you expect. She's responsible, principled, and exactly the person Grandma trusted to manage her estate." Clara's lips pressed into a thin line. "Principled. She's a stranger. She has no right. Grandma's will Our grandmother's will should have gone to family. I shook my head. This isn't about blood. Grandma Eleanor's will was always about integrity, judgment, and responsibility. You've both shown ambition. Yes, but not the values she trusted would protect her legacy. Clara's anger bubbled over. So, what? We're supposed to just sit here while some outsider, some woman who's never even been part of this family, takes everything we expected? Yes, I said firmly, because that is exactly what Grandma intended. She knew what would happen if she left it to us blindly. She knew we'd fight, manipulate, or squander what she spent decades building. And she chose someone who could honor it. Derek's jaw tightened, his fingers drumming a steady rhythm on the table. Aiden, you don't understand. She doesn't know the estate. She doesn't know the intricacies, the finances, the family secrets. How can she possibly manage this? I leaned forward, meeting his gaze. That's precisely why Grandma chose her. She doesn't come with entitlement, pride, or bias. Lila Hayes has proven she can handle responsibility. Real responsibility, not just ownership. And she's already begun. Before they could respond, a gentle knock echoed through the library. The door opened, and there she stood. Lila Hayes, calm, composed, her hazel eyes steady as they met ours. She carried herself with a quiet authority, radiating a confidence that was grounded in experience rather than ego. "Good morning," she said softly, yet her voice carried a weight that immediately demanded attention. "I understand there's some tension. I hope we can discuss this respectfully." Clara bristled. "Respectful? You've taken everything that belongs to us." "I haven't taken anything," Lila replied evenly. "Grandma Eleanor entrusted me with her legacy because she believed I could honor it responsibly. That's all. I intend to respect her wishes, and I hope you will too." Her words were deliberate, and they carried a calm authority that contrasted sharply with the storm of emotion in the room. Derek, usually reserved, struggled for a retort. Even Clara's fury faltered, if only slightly. Over the next few hours, Lila walked us through her plans for the estate. She spoke not of extravagance, but of responsibility, reorganizing the finances, funding charitable projects Grandma had supported, restoring neglected areas of the property, and ensuring the staff and tenants were treated with dignity. This estate, she explained, is not just wealth. It is influence, responsibility, and legacy. Grandma entrusted me with it because she knew I would uphold those values. I intend to honor her vision fully without exception. Clara scoffed. "So you just get to decide everything? And we watch?" "No," Lila replied, gentle but firm. "You can observe, learn, and perhaps contribute positively. But the ultimate responsibility rests on the choices I make, guided by Grandma's principles. That is exactly what she intended when she selected me." Her calm, moral clarity struck something deep within me. Grandma's choice wasn't about excluding family. It was about teaching a lesson, about showing us what stewardship truly meant and why character matters more than entitlement. Clara's frustration boiled over. "So you're saying we've been selfish? That Grandma's trust in you is some moral lesson for us?" "Yes," I said quietly, "and that's exactly what it is. The emotional will reading isn't just about inheritance. It's about understanding the values Grandma Eleanor Whitmore held dear. And it's about seeing the consequences of greed, ambition, and entitlement." Derek finally spoke, his voice low and dangerous. "You think this lesson changes anything? We could contest the will." "You could try," Lila said, her calm unshakable. "But the will is clear. Legal action will fail, and morally it is hers to decide. Grandma planned for every contingency. She anticipated your reactions, and she knew I would act responsibly, with integrity." I watched as the truth settled slowly over them. The initial anger and disbelief didn't vanish, but the seeds of understanding were planted. They had expected a fight, a loophole, a way to reclaim the estate by force or cunning. Instead, they found moral authority and calm reason, and it was unshakable. After Lila left, I remained in the library, absorbing the weight of what had transpired. I realized how much Grandma's plan had been about teaching us lessons hidden within her grandma's will, revealed not through confrontation, but through observation and principle. I thought about the USB, about the videos, the letters, the subtle breadcrumbs she had left for me. Every clue, every hint, had guided me toward understanding not just Lila Hayes, but the very essence of what it meant to inherit responsibility. In that moment, I understood that the story of this inheritance was far bigger than money, property, or titles. It was a real-life story of character, values, and moral courage. And the unexpected heir, Lila Hayes, was the living embodiment of everything Eleanor had believed in. That night, I sat alone in my study, reviewing the USB again. More secrets awaited, more lessons hidden within my grandmother's careful words. Lila Hayes's stewardship had begun, but I knew the full story. The challenges, the moral tests, and the emotional will reading moments were only just beginning. I was ready. The next phase would reveal the true depth of Eleanor Whitmore's wisdom, the hidden truths about our family, and the enduring legacy of her choices. The weeks that followed Lila Hayes's assumption of the Whitmore estate were transformative, not just for the property, but for everyone connected to it. The grand halls, once silent and formal, now carried warmth. Staff, who had long served under quiet tension, moved with renewed purpose and dignity. Gardens, neglected for years, bloomed under Lila's meticulous care. Clara and Derek, still reeling from the shock of being bypassed, remained tense. Yet even their simmering resentment began to shift as they witnessed Lila's deliberate, moral approach. Her actions were not about wealth, control, or prestige. They were about responsibility, integrity, and honoring Grandma Eleanor Whitmore's vision. I spent my days following Lila through the estate, learning how she managed both people and property. Her decisions were thoughtful and deliberate, always aligned with the principles embedded in Grandma's will. "Everything matters," she said one morning, inspecting the restored library. "Even small details. Responsibility is not measured in dollars, but in care, consistency, and intention." That's what Eleanor Whitmore believed, and it's what I aim to honor. Her words resonated deeply. I realized that this inheritance story was never just about money. It was about teaching those left behind the importance of integrity, patience, and foresight. Through her actions, Lila became a living example of the lessons Grandma Eleanor had encoded in the USB. The narrated story, the carefully curated moral guide, and the quiet challenge to all of us who thought wealth equated entitlement. One evening, Clara approached me, her arms folded, her posture rigid, yet tinged with hesitance. "I've been watching," she admitted quietly. "And I don't like it. I don't like that someone outside our bloodline manages this estate better than we ever could. But I can't deny she's doing the right thing." Derek, too, had changed in subtle ways. The sharp calculation in his eyes softened slightly. "Aiden, Lila's doing more than just keeping the estate. She's leading. And maybe that's the point of Grandma's will. She wanted someone who could handle it. Without ego. Without greed." I nodded. It was a small but significant victory. They were beginning to understand the hidden family secrets embedded within Eleanor's decisions. The inheritance wasn't meant to punish. It was meant to teach. Lila's impact extended beyond the estate walls. Local charities received funding as Eleanor had intended, with guidance from Lila's moral compass. Families in need were assisted discreetly, often without knowledge of who was behind the support. She managed the legacy with precision, turning wealth into purposeful action, embodying everything my grandmother had envisioned. I realized then that this storytelling video English audience would understand something vital. Inheritance is not simply a transfer of property. It is the transmission of values, a test of character, and a lesson in humility. Lila's stewardship became a masterclass in emotional storytelling, showing how one person, guided by integrity, could honor a legacy more profoundly than any family member who assumed entitlement automatically. I, too, had changed. Watching Lila navigate challenges with patience and moral clarity forced me to reflect on my own ambitions, choices, and flaws. I realized that the true inheritance was never about ownership of the estate. It was about understanding responsibility, learning humility, and growing into a person capable of honoring the principles Grandma Eleanor valued. The USB drive, once a simple curiosity, had become a roadmap guiding me through emotional will reading, hidden family truths, and the lessons left behind by someone who understood the fragility of entitlement. Each video, each word, each pause in Eleanor's narration was a subtle prompt to look beyond greed, beyond expectation, and to recognize what mattered most. Lila Hayes, the unexpected heir, had become the guardian of not just property, but values. The estate, now vibrant and alive, reflected her careful stewardship. Families in the town benefited from her discretion and wisdom. Staff, once cautious, now thrived under her leadership. And for the first time, I felt that Eleanor Whitmore's legacy had truly been honored. Clara and Derek continued to grapple with their disappointment, but even they could not ignore the fairness, clarity, and morality of Lila's decisions. Slowly, begrudging respect replaced bitterness. The lesson embedded in the will stories had begun to take root. Inheritance was not a reward. It was a responsibility, and only those with integrity could carry it forward. That night, I sat alone in the library, reviewing the USB one last time. Eleanor Whitmore's voice echoed softly from the speakers. Deliberate pauses, quiet advice, moral insights woven seamlessly into the narrative. It was more than a message. It was a guide, a narrated story that revealed truths about family, character, and the human capacity for growth. I understood, finally, that the inheritance was never about bloodlines, entitlement, or greed. It was about wisdom, integrity, and responsibility, the essence of a life well lived, and a legacy carefully preserved. As the moonlight spilled over the polished floors, I whispered quietly to myself, Grandma Eleanor, you were right. The true inheritance was always more than wealth. It was the lesson of life itself. And with that understanding, I felt a profound peace. The estate, the family, and the legacy were safe. Not because of law or force, but because of character, stewardship, and moral courage. The story of the video will had reached its resolution, leaving behind lessons that would resonate far beyond bricks, gardens, or gold. Lessons that would endure as long as they were remembered.
Thank you for watching this story until the end. If you found it meaningful, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell icon so you never miss an update. Your support helps us continue bringing powerful, real stories from around the world.